On a quiet street in Villisca, Iowa, sits an old White House that looks much like any other. But this house holds a dark and heavy silence. It was once filled with the life of a beloved local family, a life that was wiped out in a single night of unimaginable violence. What happened inside those walls over a century ago has become one of America's most terrifying and enduring unsolved crimes. This is the dark history of the Villisca Axe Murders. On a quiet night in 1912, an entire family and their two young guests were bludgeoned to death in their beds. The murder weapon, an axe belonging to the head of the family, was left at the scene, yet the killer was never found. How could a crime so violent, a slaughter of 6 innocent children and 2 adults, be met with such complete and chilling silence? Section 1. A peaceful night in Villisca. June 9, 1912, was a typical Sunday in the small, close-knit town of Villisca. The Moore family was well respected and liked by just about everyone. Josiah Moore, 43, was a successful local businessman, and his wife Sarah, 39, was a homemaker and a pillar of their local Presbyterian church. Together they had 4 bright, happy children: 11-year-old Herman, 10-year-old Mary Catherine, 7-year-old Arthur, and 5-year-old Paul. That evening, the family attended the Children's Day program at their church, an event Sarah had coordinated. Afterwards, the Moore children's friends, 12-year-old Lena Stillinger and her 8-year-old sister Ina, were invited for a sleepover, a common, joyful occurrence in a town where neighbors felt like family. Sometime after 9:30 p.m., the Moores and the Stillinger sisters walked home together, entering the house for what would be the last time. The night was calm, the house was full, and no one knew that a monster was lurking in the shadows, waiting for them to fall asleep. Section 2. The Discovery and the Crime. The next morning, Monday, June 10th, the Moore house was disturbingly quiet. A neighbor, Mary Peckham, noticed the family hadn't started their morning chores, which was unusual. When her knocks went unanswered, she found the doors locked from the inside. Alarmed, she called Josiah's brother, Ross Moore. Ross arrived with his own key and stepped inside while Peckham waited on the porch. In the downstairs guest bedroom, he made a grisly discovery: the bodies of Ina and Lena Stillinger. When police arrived, a search of the home revealed the full extent of the horror. Upstairs, Josiah and Sarah Moore were found bludgeoned to death. The killer had swung the axe with such force that a gouge was left in the ceiling. Josiah suffered the most savage attack. His face had been struck so many times that his eyes were gone, and he was unrecognizable. The killer then moved to the adjacent room and systematically murdered the 4 Moore children as they slept. All 8 victims were killed with an axe belonging to Josiah, which was found in the Stillinger girls' room, wiped of most, but not all, of the blood. Investigators determined the murders took place sometime between midnight and the early morning hours. They believed 7 of the 8 victims had been asleep. Only 12-year-old Lena Stillinger seemed to have been awake. She was found with a defensive wound on her arm, a tragic sign that she may have been aware in her final moments and tried to fight back. Section 3. The Bizarre and Ritualistic Scene. Beyond the sheer brutality, the crime scene was filled with bizarre details that baffled investigators. Every mirror and reflective surface in the house had been meticulously covered with cloths and clothing. In the kitchen, a bowl of bloody water sat on a table, as if the killer had tried to wash up. Nearby, a plate of uneaten food was left out. A slab of bacon, weighing about 2 pounds, was found on the floor of the downstairs bedroom, wrapped in a cloth next to the murder weapon. Adding to the mystery, some reports claimed 2 spent cigarettes were found in the attic, leading to the chilling theory that the killer hid there, waiting patiently for the family to come home and fall asleep. However, this detail is disputed, with some official accounts stating no cigarettes were ever found. The motive was clearly not robbery. Josiah's wallet was untouched. These strange, ritualistic elements transformed the case from a horrific murder into a deeply unsettling enigma. This wasn't just a crime of rage. There was a cold, methodical madness to the killer's actions after the slaughter was complete. Section 4. A bungled investigation. The chance of solving the Villisca Axe murders was likely lost within hours of the discovery. Word of the crime spread like wildfire, and before the scene could be secured, hundreds of townspeople descended on the Moore home. They traipsed through the house, contaminating every room. The murder weapon was passed from hand to hand by curious onlookers. In a truly horrific detail, some people allegedly took souvenirs, including fragments of Josiah Moore's skull. In 1912, forensic science was in its infancy. Fingerprinting wasn't yet a standard practice, and what little evidence might have existed was quickly compromised. The local coroner was overwhelmed, and with a contaminated scene and limited technology, investigators were left with almost nothing. The killer had a head start of at least 5 hours and could have easily escaped on one of the many trains that passed through Villisca daily. From the very start, the investigation was a chaotic mess, allowing the murderer to simply vanish into the night. Section 5. The suspects, local conspiracies, and a mad preacher. With no physical evidence, suspicion fell on individuals. One prominent local suspect was Frank F. Jones, a powerful Iowa state senator. Josiah Moore had once worked for Jones before leaving to start a rival business, taking the valuable John Deere dealership with him. Rumors also circulated about an affair between Josiah and Jones's daughter-in-law, though this was never proven. While few believed the 57-year-old senator swung the axe himself, many thought he was ruthless enough to hire a killer. Perhaps the most sensational suspect was Reverend George Kelly, a traveling minister who had attended the same church service as the Moores that evening. Kelly had a history of mental illness and was known to be peculiar. He left town on a train just hours before the bodies were discovered. Years later, Kelly confessed to the murders, claiming God had told him to slay utterly. But his confession came after a long interrogation, and he later recanted it, claiming he was coerced by police. He was tried twice. The first ended with a hung jury, and the second with an acquittal. Section 6. The Man on the Train, a Serial Killer Theory. While local authorities focused on Jones and Kelly, some investigators believed Villisca was just one stop for a transient serial killer. Detective James Wilkerson championed this theory, accusing a man named William Blackie Mansfield of being a contract killer hired by Frank Jones. Wilkerson connected Mansfield to other axe murders with a similar chilling signature. The victims were killed with an axe, mirrors were covered, and a lamp with the chimney removed was often left at the scene. Despite the parallels, Mansfield had a solid alibi for the night of the Villisca murders and was eventually released. In recent years, the serial killer theory has gained more traction. Researchers have pointed to a wave of similar family axe murders that occurred across the Midwest between 1911 and 1912. A suspect in some of these was Henry Lee Moore, no relation to the victims, who was convicted of murdering his mother and grandmother with an axe months after the Villisca crime. More recently, the 2017 book The Man from the Train argued that a German immigrant named Paul Muller was responsible for dozens of these slayings, using the railway system to move from town to town, leaving a trail of butchered families in his wake. While compelling, these theories remain speculative, and the true identity of the man with the axe is still unproven. Section 7. The Legacy of Silence. More than a century has passed, and the Villisca Axe murders remain officially unsolved. It's a case that haunts the annals of American true crime, a perfect storm of brutal violence, bizarre rituals, and a failed investigation. We can only wonder what modern forensics might have uncovered. DNA from the axe handle, or even from the disputed cigarettes in the attic, could have potentially identified the killer. The Moore home still stands in Villisca. It's been preserved and now operates as a dark tourist attraction where visitors can tour the house and even spend the night. It serves as a grim monument to the 8 lives cut short and to a crime that has left an indelible stain on the heart of a small Iowa town. If you found this look into one of America's coldest cases compelling, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more dark histories. Let us know in the comments which theory you find most plausible. The story of the Villisca Axe Murders is a chilling reminder that evil can strike anywhere, even in the most peaceful of places. A killer entered a home, slaughtered 8 people, performed a strange ritual, and then simply walked away, never to be held accountable. The silence that followed that horrific act has never truly been broken, and the ghosts of Villisca continue to ask a question that, after all this time, we may never be able to answer. Who was the man with the axe?